Cern Basher was in the neighborhood. You said it was raining in Florida, got on a jet plane. Oh, no, that's not what you said, right? No, it's you said it's raining in Florida and you like it.
Yes, I like the rain. The rain is good.
All right, okay. And it was
Yeah.
thunderstorming, though. I mean, it was really serious rain. Yeah.
It was. It woke me up at 4:30 this morning.
And when you woke up at 4:30 this morning, did you short Tesla before the market opened?
Absolutely not.
Because that would have been a very good move today. I don't have a clue. Down 7.5. I don't know what the heck's going on. There's no news to justify it. It must be
just a little fluctuation, healthy fluctuation.
Healthy fluctuation. Yeah, that's that. I'm going to remember that as my code word for the future. All right. So, but I understand you've got some things that might make the stock go up. If people paid attention to your slides and your charts and your stuff. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to you.
That sounds good. We didn't test this, but let's see if I can share my slides.
Theoretically, there you go.
Here we go. We'll start off like I usually try to do with a beautiful image.
Yeah.
And this I thought was a rather nice looking Cybertruck.
Yeah.
That blue, there's something to that blue. I don't know what kind of blue that is. But that is very nice.
Yeah. Yeah, and the matte hood is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's just not just the angle, but that it's actually matte on the hood.
It looks like it, doesn't it? Yep, yeah. That's very nice.
Yeah.
All right, here's another very nice image. Oops. See if I can advance the slides. Here we go. This is electric vehicle sales in the month of June in the United States. And you can see our friend Tesla had 61,000-ish vehicles that were sold. And all the others combined accounted for 47,000 vehicles. Now, I saw this chart and I thought that this was a very nice chart, but I felt compelled to add something to it. Any guesses, Randy, on what I added to this chart?
ICE vehicle sales.
No.
Oh, okay.
I added this.
Oh.
So Tesla's vehicles they're being sold at a profit.
Yes.
All of the other automakers, every single one of them, I believe, without fail, are burning money selling EVs. And we'll go a little bit deeper into this in a minute, but I labeled that cash furnaces. They are burning cash. Yes, they're selling close to 50,000, you know, in the month of June, but they're all losing money on them.
This reminds me of the early days of Apple, when Apple was making 120% of all the profit because everybody else was losing money in the smartphone business. Kia and Hyundai. I read an article the other day. I don't see, it's too hard with all the colors there to pick it up. Kia is the red one and Hyundai is the kind of beigeish. So I would say, so if you put them, so if you put them together, they would have been number 2 at 10%, I believe.
I think that's right.
They're sister companies.
Yeah.
We know that they're losing money on their U.S. manufacturing or not.
I don't know for sure. I would be shocked if they were making money.
Okay.
But I can't definitively tell you that. I know that Ford is losing money.
Right.
We know that Rivian's losing money.
Right.
And pretty confident that the rest are.
Yeah.
Whether the combination of Hyundai and Kia are losing money, I don't know. We can look at that. Maybe I can report back to you next week on that.
Okay.
If that information is available.
Right.
In the last couple of weeks, we've taken a look at Lucid and Rivian. Here is XPeng or Xiaopeng, if I've got the pronunciation correct. The average profit per vehicle, actually for them, they're slightly profitable. They're making a couple $1,000s in gross profit per vehicle. Okay. So that's good. That's good. That's what we want to see. Now, the challenge is this, is that operating profits are still negative. Now, the fact that the gross profit is positive is good, and the fact that operating profit is negative is not terrible if they can scale the business. So they should be able to become profitable if they can continue to scale. So this will be an interesting one to see. Now, I think that AJ pointed out maybe some potential sort of accounting gimmickry here. I won't go into detail here, but with Chinese companies, you have to be a little bit careful with both subsidies and also just the way they do their accounting.
Yeah, I think,
Uh,
yeah, he was also, yeah, I think he was maybe a little bit concerned about whether they were capturing the true capital costs that went into the vehicles.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I present this as it is here, but just know there might be some more to the story behind the scenes.
Mhm.
Ford, I think we can rely on their
Right.
reporting a little bit better. Ford lost 1.1 billion on their EV business in Q2. And that was an improvement over the last quarter, which was an improvement over the previous quarter. So Ford appears to be heading in the right direction. But the question is, are they? So I decided to dig a little bit deeper on this one. Okay. So what I did was compare Ford at the stage that it is now over the last 9 quarters. So Ford's numbers are the last 9 quarters. And I overlaid Tesla with a period earlier in Tesla's history when they were about the same size as Ford in terms of
I
their
see.
EV sales.
Okay.
So in Q3 of 2016, Tesla had about 24,800 deliveries of its vehicles. And in Q2 of 2022, Ford had about 24,000 wholesales. Now, there's a distinction between deliveries to a customer and wholesale, sales, which goes to Ford's dealers. So Ford can kind of print whatever number they want on wholesales. Now, that's a game that only can last so long. You can only stuff the channel so long. Eventually, that comes home to roost if those vehicles are not being sold. So with a company like Ford, you should never just look at one quarter. You should look at it over a period of time. And you can see that their deliveries really haven't grown much in 9 quarters. And over this time, they've introduced the Ford Mach-E, they've introduced the Ford F-150 Lightning. And so you can see that they really haven't gained a whole lot of traction. Now, for Tesla, this period of time was when they introduced the Model 3, and that's what the yellow arrow represents.
I see.
Basically, the first sales of the Model 3, I believe, in the summer of 2017. And they ramped those sales up pretty quickly, and then they went through what Elon calls production hell. Right? They had a difficult period here, and they went through that. Okay. Now, I've cut this off at Q4 2019. If we continue, obviously, Tesla's deliveries continue to go up much more than this.
Right.
Right. Okay. That's deliveries. Let's take a look at revenue. So Tesla's revenues on the same number of vehicles at the beginning were higher than where Ford was. And Tesla's revenues, in spite of their challenges, continued to go up, whereas Ford has basically flatlined. Right?
Yep.
Here is earnings before interest, cost, and taxes, or EBIT. Tesla had negative EBIT for a while. They lost about 500 million per quarter for about 4 quarters. Model 3 started to ramp. They started to make some money. They went through production hell, lost some money, and then recovered. And then from there, continued to grow. Ford, on the other hand, has been a true cash furnace. Okay. Ford has lost, 1.5 billion a quarter, billion a quarter, pick your number. On average, in total here, I believe it's about 9.2 or around $10 billion, depending on what numbers you're looking at, but around $10 billion of losses in these 9 quarters for Ford. Tesla, during that same sort of 9-quarter period, lost about $2.6 billion. Tesla lost money too, but they came out of it and went on to make a lot of money. Ford is still struggling down here. And then EBIT margin. So Tesla, at its worst, had negative 20% EBIT margins. Pretty painful.
Right.
But Ford's EBIT margins are negative 100%.
Right.
And actually, I was generous here because it actually is not a meaningful number. It's a negative, 10,000% or something ridiculous for this quarter. I just called it negative 100s. But basically, they've lost 100% margin now for the last 3 quarters in a row. That's a big gap to close. There's a lot, obviously, that's going wrong in their business in order to have such horrible profitability on their EV business. And with their announcement yesterday, further, taking some charges and cutting back, the road ahead is going to be tough for Ford. Okay.
Yeah, everybody kind of saw Ford as being the U.S. manufacturer who had a shot at being the competitor, and now they've pushed back really their new products into the 26, 27 area. And who am I to say? But I do say all the time. So it seems like that's going to be way too late to be a player.
Yeah, I think so. And AJ notes here that Ford's cumulative losses is about 9.3 billion.
Right.
And with the announcement yesterday, Ford is going to take a $400 million write-down. And there's also, I think they said their actions may result in additional expenses and cash expenditures of up to 1.5 billion. So the losses will continue for Ford. Now, according to AJ, Ford says that they want to reach positive EBIT within 12 months after launching a new vehicle. And according to AJ, that means that Ford will have to delay new vehicles indefinitely because there's no way they can reach positive EBIT in just 12 months. Right. That's even a tough thing for Tesla to achieve.
Right.
So put that in context. So Ford's 9.3 billion puts them in the Lucid category of losses. Lucid's lost about 10.4 billion. Ford at around 9.3 to 10 billion they've lost about as much money as Lucid has on their EV business. Now these losses back here in this chart, I'm not sure if this includes the CapEx. So these numbers may be a little bit apples to oranges because this is a free cash flow, which is after the CapEx.
Okay.
And so that would make it even worse. So if we add Ford's CapEx, they may be getting more down to the Rivian territory. We don't know exactly. Interestingly, I asked AJ this morning what he thinks the cumulative losses are for the entire auto industry globally in EVs.
Oh.
And Randy, would you hazard a guess what his response was?
Is this ex Tesla or is this including Tesla's gains?
I don't know if it was. I'm assuming it's ex Tesla.
Okay, ex Tesla could be 100 billion.
Exactly what he said. He says he thinks it's in excess of $100 billion. He says he thinks he has the data, so maybe we'll see a graph or a chart from him at some point on this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so isn't it amazing? Tesla's made about 10 billion, and the rest of the industry's lost 100.
So you got Volkswagen and Mercedes. We know that they're just not doing well with these things, and Toyota's not even trying. I mean, yeah, wow.
Yeah. So when it rains, it pours for the EV industry, unfortunately. And there's only one company that's been able to produce profits, and that's Tesla.
Right.
So with it rains, it pours transition, here's a beautiful Cybertruck in the rain. Looks pretty stunning in the rain.
Yeah.
All right. Last week, our good friend of the show, Brian White, did a video, and he called it Giga How Big. And in it, he presented some data, some interesting visuals on how big Giga Texas is. Now, this is an outline up here of Giga Texas. And this new part down here in gray is the expansion, the Cortex, the supercomputing cluster that they're building.
Oh, okay.
So the building actually runs here all the way from the white part on the left all the way through to the end of the gray part over here.
Right.
Okay. Now, on this screen, he's showing the Boeing factory in Everett, Washington, and how big it is. This is actually the world's largest building, I think, by volume, because to fit an airplane inside, you need pretty tall ceilings.
Yep.
But Giga Texas seems to stack up pretty well in terms of size. Okay, so it's a pretty big building. And again, Boeing's building airplanes, Tesla's building vehicles, which are quite a bit smaller than airplanes. You can see actually 3 airplanes here on the bottom, barely.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So as I'm one to do, I took the analysis a little bit further.
Okay.
Now, this image is actually from Tesla. I think Elon included this in one of his presentations. I forget when this was. But if you stack Giga Texas on end, and add in the little bit now they're building for the Cortex, the building would be 4,208 feet tall. Okay, which is 1.2 kilometers long for our metric friends. It's about 1,000 feet wide, 322 meters wide. And if it was sitting on the ground, it would be about 80 feet tall or 24 meters high. But if you stand it on the end, it would be taller than the world's tallest building by about 50%. It'd be 3.7 times taller than the Eiffel Tower, which is shown here.
Right.
It would be 13 times taller than the Statue of Liberty, which I tried to put down here. It's kind of hidden, but you can barely see it. And actually, I think this is probably bigger than what it really is. And it's about 10 times the height of a fully stacked starship, which I have blasting off here in the corner. And again, this is probably really bigger than it should be, because you should be able to fit 10 of those in the height of Giga Texas.
Right.
And Starship is not a small space vessel. It would be about 350 floors high if it was a building that stood on end.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty monstrous building.
Indeed.
Okay, but let's not stop there. Let's ask, how long is it? So we just had the Olympics, and one of our Olympians, Ryan Krauser, has the world record in the shot put, which is a 16-pound ball. It's pretty heavy, and he has the world record for that. And in order for him, if he threw his world record 52 times, he could get from one end of Giga Texas to the other.
Okay, all right.
Okay, now that would be a pretty tall order from him. It would take him a while to do that. The javelin. This is an old world record that hasn't been beaten and probably never will be, because the javelin now has changed in terms of the form of it. But it would take Jan Zelezny, I believe you say his name, not 12 and a half throws. It would take him 13 throws in order to go the length of Giga Texas. Back to our American friends, the longest NFL field goal, Justin Tucker, I think it was 66 and some yards, almost 67 yards. It would take him 20 kicks to go from one end to the other. So that would be pretty amazing. And then the longest ship, the 𝐓𝐞𝐬𝐝, it's 2.7 times longer than the longest oil tanker in the world. I don't think this ship is with us anymore, but it was a monster. How far around is it, Randy? Gary the Snail, which is what the Boring Company measures itself up against.
Right.
It would take it 2.68 days to crawl around the building.
I see.
Okay. It would take Usain Bolt, running at his top end speed in the 100 meters, if he could sustain that, almost 5 minutes sprinting around Giga Texas.
Yes.
Okay. And Usain Bolt's fast. It would take a cheetah running at 65 miles an hour, which is their top end speed, 1.78 minutes. And if we put the two of them together, the Usain would have to have a 1.23 mile lead before the cheetah caught him. So that, if Usain was just to survive running around, he'd have to be 1.23 miles ahead in order for them to tie across the finish line.
You had too much fun putting this one together.
I did, and I'm not done yet. This one's for you.
Okay.
How much can you fit inside Giga Texas?
Yes.
366,000 megapacks, if you could stack them all, lengthwise, height-wise, width-wise. 684,000 Model Ys, which is more than a year's production. Right? So maybe Tesla's hiding a few Model Ys in the factory. Who knows? 287 million beach balls.
Okay.
156 billion dwarf hamsters. And I use hamsters because actually Elon mentioned this when he introduced the factory.
Yes.
For those that like golf, almost 250 billion golf balls could fit inside.
All right.
There's probably that many lost in lakes around the world.
Just mine.
Yes. And finally, for those that love Lego, it would be 2.1 trillion standard Lego bricks.
And my son had that many.
Yes. I've stepped on that many, I think.
You stepped on that.
And finally, for you, Randy, I didn't put this on this chart, but I calculated it. How many bicycle water bottles do you think would fit inside?
The 22 ounce or the 28 ounce?
I think probably 22 ounce.
Okay.
What would be your guess?
Oh, what would be my guess? Well, it'll be somewhere between a hamster and a beach ball. So, 100 billion.
13.4 billion.
13.4 billion. Okay.
Yeah, maybe it was a larger size.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a massive factory. Yes, I
Massive,
had some
massive.
fun. I had some fun with
I
this.
did a little skipping around one time about the largest buildings in the world. And if I remember right, the largest buildings in the world are actually hotels. And I want to say that Circus might have been at one time or might still be the largest building. Uh, what do you want to call it? Usable square feet.
Interesting.
But and then a couple of the other ones in Las Vegas, then there was some others around the world. Of course, we have the Pentagon, which is another one that has massive amount of usable square feet. I don't remember the rest of my research right now, but that was one of the ones that was interesting to me. It turned out that hotels, in terms of usable square feet in one building, were kind of at the top of the charts.
Interesting. Well, for those interested in a deeper dive on this, Brian White's video is worth a watch too on this topic.
There you go. Okay.
Yep. All right. So speaking of Giga Texas, here's some beautiful Cybertrucks that have been produced.
Yeah.
Waiting to be delivered. All right.
It looks like some of my screenshots on television when I'm, we need to have it fade out and fade in and go higher and lower, and they need to move a little. Anyway.
It's a beautiful site. Yep. Not all parked perfectly like they do in China.
Right.
But still very nice. All right, let's shift gears. Elon on the second quarter conference call talked about Robotaxi potentially being like Airbnb. So there was a little bit of chatter on X this week sort of about that. And I did a little bit of work on this. And so here's some background. I believe there was about 130 million housing units in the United States.
Okay.
About 90 million of those are single family homes. About 32 million are multifamily homes or apartments. 7.7 million mobile homes and some other things. But 45 million of the 130 million are rentals. So about 35% of all the homes, houses, livable units in the US are rented. 16% of single family homes are rented. 91% of apartments are rented. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Mobile homes, about 23% and 13% of the other. So we also know from Airbnb that in 2022, that in the United States, the hosts of the properties listed on Airbnb made 22 billion.
Wow.
And they say that the typical host, which is the median host, the median value, earned more than 14,000 for the year in 2022. Okay, and they're saying how important this extra income is to their hosts.
Yes, I had my Inglewood house rented out. I had 4 to 5 guests at any given time, so it was way more than 14,000.
Yeah, that's the median value.
Yes,
yeah. So there's a whole bunch that earn very little, and then there's a few at the top end that probably earn a ton. Now, the median property value in the U.S. roughly is around 400,000. So if we look at the middle of this table, if the median income from Airbnb is 14,000, and let's say that the average property value is 400,000, then they're earning a cash flow yield of about 3.5% per year. Now, this wouldn't include expenses necessarily. This is just the income from Airbnb.
Sure.
Now, it's quite likely that obviously there's a huge range around this, as we just discussed. Some of those homes might be worth a lot more. In that case, those people actually may be making way more than 14,000. But if they weren't, it would be about 2.3% cash flow yield. And some of those properties, the value is way less. They might be earning, 7%. Okay. So this is really rough. We don't have much data to work with here, just that one number that it's 14,000 per host per year.
Right.
Okay. Still, though, what I decided to do was contrast that with the potential earnings that somebody could get from putting their vehicle in Tesla's Robotaxi network.
Right.
We hear a lot of people say, I don't want somebody in my car. But yet for Airbnb hosts, they're quite fine having somebody in their home,
Mm-hmm.
which I would argue people can mess up your home way more than they can mess up your vehicle
Yes, and your life.
and your life. So there's,
If you're still living in the home I'm talking about.
yeah, right. So there are plenty of people in the US and around the world that are comfortable renting out their home. So therefore, there should be plenty of people comfortable renting out their vehicle. And I would argue, particularly if the financial incentive is enough, that it's too good to pass up.
Yeah.
So what I did here was take my Robotaxi model where I've got Tesla sharing the revenue with individual vehicle owners. And Elon has talked about many times that this is their plan,
Mm-hmm.
as well as company-owned vehicles. But this is just the split between individual owners and Tesla.
Right.
Now, there's a whole bunch of assumptions that go into this, and we can look at a couple here in a second. But if the vehicle is utilized 30% in a given day, which is like 7.2 hours, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
then the individual owner in a year, if they put the vehicle in every day for a year, could make as much as $20,000.
Okay.
Okay. If the utilization is only 30%. And what I mean by utilization is the vehicle is either moving with the passenger inside
Mm-hmm.
or moving to reposition itself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So even at 30%, I'm not saying 30% of those hours the car's making money. It's just moving 30% of the time.
Okay. And that's a $20,000 net in their pocket, more or less.
Yes. And unlike the Airbnb numbers, this is after expenses of cleaning, charging,
Okay.
depreciation,
Okay.
insurance,
Depreciation.
taxes,
Okay.
everything, including depreciation. That's right.
Okay. And is that a number based on some of the higher per mile numbers, like the $2, or more the 50 cents to $1 range?
Yeah. So here
Oh,
is the number. So I have $1 base fare
okay.
and 50 cents per mile.
Okay.
Okay.
This
And
is
if
at the
you're
low end
the lower end, I believe, yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Now, if you recall in my models, I also have Tesla charging for idle time.
Uh-huh.
So if I fall asleep in the vehicle, they don't have to
Right.
try to kick me out. They just keep charging me.
Right.
Right. And that's equivalent to the vehicle, what the vehicle would make if it was traveling 25 miles an hour at 50 cents
Uh-huh.
per mile.
Mhm.
It's about 21 cents.
Okay.
So it's equivalent. So that the owner of the vehicle shouldn't care whether it's moving with the passenger or just sitting with the passenger.
Sure.
And if I'm on a conference call, let me sit in the car and finish my call before you kick me out.
Right.
Right. So yeah, there's a bunch of other assumptions here, but this 20,000 then puts us kind of in the middle of the chart.
Mm-hmm.
And if the vehicle is worth 50,000, then that's a 40% cash flow yield.
Right.
Now, a lot of people's Teslas aren't worth 50, they might be worth 25,000.
Right.
So now you're looking at an 80% cash flow yield on that vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to tell me that you don't want anybody else in your vehicle messing it up, well, a lot of people are going to say, you know what, this is worth it.
Yeah. And a lot of people are going to say, if you don't want people riding in your car and making that $20,000 a year, I'm willing to pay you to take the car off your hands and put it into the stream of commerce.
Well, that's right. And you and I have talked about that used Teslas become hot commodities. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Any Tesla vehicle that is robotaxi capable,
Yes.
hardware 4 for sure, hardware 3, we think,
Yep.
sees a bump in its value because it can start to make money, becomes a money-making machine. That's right. Yeah. So you can look on this chart and say, okay, I don't want to put my vehicle in every day. I might put it in 25% of the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's $5,000 a year. If your vehicle's worth 50, that's a 10% yield. If your vehicle's worth 25, then it's a 20% yield.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you can kind of look on this chart, you can adjust these values to whatever you think is your situation and based on how much time you want to put in. So my conclusion was this is pretty attractive. It will be pretty attractive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as you pointed out, we didn't have to stretch our assumptions here. Like this is way undercutting where Uber and Lyft are.
Oh, yeah.
And Waymo.
No,
right.
I would not expect this to be where things start out.
No.
They're going to start out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if you're at $2 or $3 a mile, then the numbers get nutty.
Right.
Okay. So I've got some further work to do here, but I thought this was kind of an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah.
and compared to Airbnb. And I'm actually going as far to say that I think there may be an impact at some point on Airbnb, because they may find that a lot of the hosts decide to get rid of their homes
Oh,
and buy robotaxis if that becomes possible,
yeah, yeah,
because the economics will favor that versus renting out a house on Airbnb.
yeah. Or maybe it's a combo deal. You get
Maybe.
the house and the car is part of the deal. Yeah.
Well, that would be smart. But in that case, you wouldn't need your own car. You just use robotaxi. So
Yeah.
there's no, yeah. And some people actually do that now. They rent the house and the car.
Mhm.
I've seen that, and that some of those folks are quite successful in doing that,
Mhm.
and that kind of package deal. But with a robotaxi, you don't really need to throw the car in.
Right.
Because why pay for the car if you're not using it?
Sure.
Okay. This is a good cartoon. Brains? No, actually, he's hoping for AI.
That's a good one.
I think that maybe all of humanity is at that point right now.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I would say probably only 1% of humanity is aware. No, okay, more than 1%. Maybe
Yeah.
50% are probably unaware that we're even going to be going into this whole new era.
Yeah. So there was a paper that I guess was published in June. It got some attention this past week, called Situational Awareness.
Mhm.
I'm not going to go into all the details here, but there was a few little charts I thought they were quite interesting as it pertained to Tesla and AI. But first of all, some background in terms of AI's capabilities, that they think by 2028, the capability of an AI is kind of at the level of a researcher / engineer,
Okay.
as opposed to maybe a smart high schooler or, college student that it might be now
Right.
in terms of its capability. So we've seen it go from a preschooler to elementary to high
Mhm.
school,
Mhm.
moving on up. Okay.
Yep.
Which is to be expected as the capabilities grow.
Sure.
This is kind of an interesting chart that looks at the over time on the left. Here's GPT-4 in 2022, and OOM is order of magnitude.
Hmm.
So as the AI becomes one order of magnitude greater, so 10 times greater,
Mhm.
you need about 10 times the number of H100 equivalents,
Oh, yeah.
right? And then 1 million, and then 10 million, and 100 million. And the cost, interestingly, goes from 500 million to billions to tens of billions to hundreds of billions to maybe $1 trillion plus. So the cost scales, and then the power needs also are going up by orders of magnitude.
Right.
Okay. And if you see here on this right side, that you go from needing the power of 10,000 average homes to 100,000 homes to the power that the Hoover Dam or a large nuclear reactor can throw off, or the power of a small or medium US state, or the power of 20% of all the electricity production in the United States.
Yeah.
So this is interesting because obviously this can't happen. We can't have AI consume that much power. We're going to have to find ways to be more efficient with it, or we're going to have to find ways to generate more power.
A lot more power. Yeah.
Right. And I thought these following charts were quite interesting. This is American power generation is not, it's growing over time. But in yellow here, it's hard to see, but in yellow is the total demand for power for AI projected out to 2030.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
interesting times.
Yeah. Talking about a lot on the show, and I actually put out a plea to Elon yesterday and today, and it's like, I don't think anybody else is going to do this. Somebody should be doing a top-down view, almost a General Eisenhower, uh, interstate highway look at the overall energy requirements for the United States. China is really our only economic competitor anymore, and China has obviously looked at this and decided they're going to be ahead of the curve, and I think it's a strategic problem for the United States as well as an economic problem. And so the United States, if they're going to be in the game, we need almost a Manhattan Project level effort. And I think you're going to talk more about that.
Well, as is always on the show, Randy, you're always one slide ahead of me. And you're right, here's China. And clearly China has been thinking strategically about this for a long time.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in the context of AI, but just in terms of power generation and power needs.
Right.
They have been building that capacity, and they're certainly in a much better position than we appear to be.
Right. Now they have 3 times as many people. So just to
Yep.
get to our level, they would need 3 times as much energy. That's assuming, apples and apples. But if they get to 3 times as much energy, you could say that they might be equal to us on a per capita basis.
Yeah. And based on this trajectory, it looks like they will, if these trajectories are indicative of where we'll actually be in 2030.
Right.
It's possible that we find a way to make an acceleration here at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of energy in China, this is an image of the factory progress.
Okay.
According to officials in China, it's 45% complete. This is the Megapack factory in China.
In 3 months.
In 3 months. Yeah. And here is a render of how it might look when it's finished.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming these are solar panels on the roof.
Makes sense.
Makes sense. And here's where they'll store the Megapacks as they come out of the factory before they get shipped. So it makes it easy to count them if you have a drone flying over.
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
Yes.
I think Bradford's going to have to, sit out here on the street and count them as they come out.
We'll get them an airline ticket.
That's right. And then interestingly, I thought this was neat. Yesterday, we saw that there's a project that's been approved to stretch the sun cable all the way from Northern Australia to Singapore, which is 4,300 kilometers, about 3,000 miles. Very, very long, high power cable, 24 gigawatt plus amount of power. In the original plan, they planned to install 42 gigawatts of battery storage. Now, my understanding is that it's been scaled back a bit, but no doubt there will be a significant amount of battery storage as part of this project. So the Shanghai factory needs to get up and running because 42 gigawatts is more than 1 year's production of that factory in terms of its capacity. Yeah. 42 gigawatt hours.
Yeah.
And Elon actually commented, sure you can see this down below, but he said impressively bold. So he likes it. Right.
And I think it's the Norwegians are doing something similar up at their end of the world and also planning to be going underwater with some of their excess energy because they are building, I think it's Norway. I sometimes get those Northern European countries mixed up, but excess capacity, a lot of excess capacity that they can export and make themselves even richer than they are now.
That's right. And I think there would also be an opportunity probably in North Africa to stretch power from solar farms, particularly in places like Morocco and maybe even Libya across the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
So we'll see if that develops. So Randy, this will probably be a good stopping point before our next video. We're going to start talking about EV fires.
I was going to say, are you sure we want this particular image to be shown anywhere?
Well, before this show goes down in flames, let's pause here, and then we can pick it up in the next one and talk about the truth about EV fires. I think that's an interesting topic.
All right, sir. Let's as you say, let's break it here. We'll do the next episode. Theoretically, will be on Saturday for those of you watching this on Thursday. And as always, sir, thank you for putting together the interesting slideshow. Have you considered your next career might be as a professor, where you need all those great slideshows for the classroom?
No, that sounds like too much work for not enough reward.
My wife would agree with you. Okay, thanks so much, and we'll see you in a minute.